All right, guys, welcome back. We are on day 7 and we are starting chapter 2. Can you believe it? I mean, it's gone so quickly. Went straight through chapter 1. I think we did a pretty good job. We've been learning some pretty interesting things along the way about this story, about this character, and hopefully learning a lot about writing at the same time. So, let's dig into where we left off. We're about halfway into this scene with our captain of the Yakuza and our mysterious Mr. Sharp, who has been summoned to this meeting and is trying to work out exactly what is going on. So I'm not going to read through the entire story anymore because it's just going to get too long if I keep doing that. So let's just read this scene in which we are, and hopefully it will suggest to us what still needs to be done and how we're going to start chapter 2. So I'm going to talk about a few things, a few common mistakes that I've made in the past and which editors have told me, this is where you're going wrong. So let's go straight into it. So remember, we're in the Green Bird restaurant. This has been the arranged meeting point between our two principal characters. So hopefully you guys can read this. Please do, everyone in the chat, just let me know if you can hear me. Everything's good, right? Okay, cool. So our guy walks into the bar, into this restaurant, and he tells us about it. So the place was empty except for one table in the middle of the room. The woman sitting at it looked up at me as I entered. She was young and good looking, had those long lashes and sticky red lips. I should have run straight out of there. But two bruisers in cheap black suits stepped up behind me and blocked the entrance. The woman checked her watch and smiled her red lips. She motioned to the seat opposite her, and it wasn't really a question. I glanced at the fire door in the far right of the room. I might not have been as big as the bruisers behind me, but I was sure as hell faster. I thought about the homeless guy slumped against the dumpster. No doubt these two would trip over him if they tried to chase me. I joined the woman at a table but said nothing. There is a story we tell children, she said, speaking in Japanese like she knew I could understand her, about a troublesome tanuki who plagued an honest farmer for days on end. One day the farmer laid a trap and caught the tanuki. He tied the tanuki up and told his wife not to untie it before he got back from the market and made a soup. Cry and cry did the tanuki to be let free. Now the farmer's wife was kind and took pity on the little creature, but no sooner did she untie it did the tanuki kill her and chop her into pieces and make a soup out of her. The tanuki then shapeshifted into the form of the farmer's wife, and when the farmer came home, the tanuki fed him the soup. The woman snapped her fingers, and from the kitchen came a waiter who put 2 bowls of steaming soup in front of us. The woman smiled at me. Go ahead, she said. I glanced at the fire door again. That's a children's story, I asked her, but my feet were dancing under the table. The woman ate a spoon of soup and licked her lips. My name is Kyori Matsumoto, Yakuza Captain 18, head of the clan Matsumoto, and she who lays claim to the 4th Ward Shinjuku of the great city, Tokyo. James Sharp, I said, spooning my own soup. Troublesome tanuki. I couldn't tell whether that quip got to her because she had about the best poker face I'd ever seen. A flawless complexion like a doll. She continued to eat her soup. She sat tall and upright, all her movements precise as if choreographed well in advance. We sat there for 2 minutes, saying nothing, the only sound coming from her soup bowl. I couldn't help watching her red lips glide over a soup spoon. So actually, we don't need this line. Do you see how this line here slows down? It slows down that whole bit of prose. Okay, so this whole thing about we sat there for 2 minutes saying nothing, the only sound coming from a soup bowl, like it's very descriptive and it gives us, a bit of a time frame and that kind of thing, but it's so unnecessary, right? This can be made so much simpler by eliminating that line, and we stay in our character, our protagonist's head. He's describing the situation through his eyes, which we've talked about is important. So, I couldn't tell whether that quip got to her because she had about the best poker face I'd ever seen, a flawless complexion like a doll. She continued to eat her soup. She sat tall and upright, all her movements precise as if choreographed well in advance. I couldn't help watching her red lips glide over her soup spoon. Right, so the whole focus of that paragraph is on this Yakuza captain, and it's all being stated. We're seeing it play out through our protagonist's eyes. So that's really important. Hence why that other sentence just didn't work. It slowed the whole thing down. So then we carry on. The puzzle box, she said, eventually, right? This eventually could be turned into maybe, she said after a while, but it's already been built in. We didn't need that thing before of, after we sat there for 2 minutes saying nothing, because this single word does that itself. So, okay. I took it out of my pocket and put it on the table, but I said nothing. I wanted her to do all the talking. Still unsolved, I see, she said, and sounded disappointed. She was beginning to get on my nerves. That was the same tone Sabrina used to use when I came home late from a job. Still alive then. Again, now that I read this, for the, fifth, sixth time, I just see again, this whole thing, while it does reinforce the idea of the ex-wife, it does bring that back, it does call it back to us, it's unnecessary for this scene. It doesn't actually add anything to this scene, right? So we're going to delete that. And this is all a part of the process. You write what you thought was a good line 3 days ago, and then a couple of days later you realize, wow, that's just fat. And cut the fat, guys. That's all we're doing when we're editing. Cut the fat. So instead of saying, still unsolved, I see, our antagonist, this Yakuza captain Kyori Matsumoto, is just going to carry on talking, right? We said that was her character. Her character type is, she's very pompous almost, right? She's the head of the Yakuza, and she's talking to our protagonist, right? She feels like a queen. She's an empress in the presence of a pauper. So she doesn't really acknowledge him so much in the beginning. She's just asserting her dominance in the way that she speaks and delivers her lines. So she just carries on talking. The puzzle box, she said eventually, I took it out of my pocket and put it on the table, but I said nothing. I wanted her to do all the talking. Let's let her do all the talking, right? The first puzzle boxes were made long ago in Hakone, said Kyori Matsumoto. A safeguard for personal jewelry and keeping children's fingers from sewing needles. But as their complexity grew, the samurai and ancient warlords began using them to pass their secret messages. I received a similar puzzle box when, upon my ascendancy to Yakuza captain. This is that whole bit of research that we did, and we found out that these puzzle boxes, they weren't made for an emperor as a trick or anything like that. In fact, they were used by samurai and ancient warlords, which is just so much cooler. So we've bunged that in here, and it just gives us maybe some ideas of what could happen in the future of this story. Maybe we're going to see, ancient warlord clans, ancient secrets coming out in later chapters. I don't know. We are making this story up as we go along, but it's little things like this where the research informs the story and takes it in a place where you could have never imagined. So, right. So then our protagonist now, he is trying to get back in the game, right? Yeah, I didn't realize the Japanese mob were so liberal, I said. That's his line. He's trying to get this Yakuza captain to flinch. That was the first time I saw a grimace. It was a dangerous game to play, but I had to keep pushing her buttons if I wanted her to talk. So far, she'd been in complete control. She seemed to know everything about me, and I knew nothing about her. If I was going to make any progress, I had to assert myself. So I fired my mouth and ate my soup. Okay, there's a lot of repetition in there, and I think we can, right now, just make this a little bit better. The one thing that I do want to address, we talked about this yesterday, is making sure that your characters are consistent with their own, with themselves, just with their outlook on life and with who they are. So, for instance, if you have someone who never smiles, right? You better not put in a line where they smile, right? As crude an example as that is, you get the idea. If you have a character who's very depressed, they're not going to be cracking jokes, on every other line. So too here, I said yesterday that I really want this Yakuza captain, this Kyori Matsumoto, to be a very cold character, almost a robotic kind of character. She doesn't show her emotions. She's a stone cold poker face, as we've already seen, right? She had about the best poker face I'd ever seen. So to see her grimace so early, to see her make any sort of emotional reaction, not going to work. That's not consistent with the character. And, a reader might not necessarily pick that up consciously, but subconsciously they're going, wait, so what's going on here? There's something wrong. So let's just clean this up a little bit. So instead of saying, that was the first time I saw a grimace, let's just say that, so hold on. So let's go like this. Kyori Matsumoto, maybe she just, fixes him with, a look. Okay. Now this is, this a look business, she fixed me with a look is a little bit vague, but it's a great little, it's a great word to use in this sort of situation where you want to let the reader interpret what that look is. Okay, we've said this before. We want the readers to do a lot of the work. The reader wants to do a lot of the work. Our audience loves to do the work. So, make them work. And the more they have to work for the story, the more they will love that story because they're creating it in part themselves. They're not just being spoon-fed information. And a great example of that is any of John le Carré's novels, the spy novels. They're very hard to follow at certain points, but if you do the work, the author is making that promise to us that you are a smart audience, and I believe you can follow this, and if you follow this story, you will love it, and we do because his novels are incredible. So okay, Kyori Matsumoto fixed me with a look, and then we can have this. It was a dangerous game to play. But I had to keep pushing the buttons. Remember, our guy has. Why is he doing this? Yes, he doesn't really need to keep her talking, does he? If I wanted to start to act. So again, this line here now doesn't make sense based on what we edited yesterday. Right? We know that this character, this Kyori Matsumoto, is someone who likes to talk. She's just, given us this whole spiel here, this whole dialogue bit here. This is a huge bit of dialogue. This character loves to talk. So our protagonist doesn't need to get her to keep talking, right? He doesn't need to push her buttons if he wants her to talk. Rather, he needs a different reason, and that reason is that he's basically come here, he's been summoned to this meeting, and he is in a disadvantaged position, right? Remember, our character, he has a problem with women, he has an attitude problem, he's got a big ego. His real problem at the moment is not that he needs to get information, it's primarily that his ego is in the way and he doesn't want to be seen as a, as a subordinate. So let's use that and stay true to the character and his, and in this case, his reasoning for what he's doing. So let's try something like, it was a dangerous game to play, but, I'd be damned if I let some girl keep the upper hand. Right? Now, some girl or some woman, maybe. Remember, he seems to have a problem with women, our guy. So, if I let some woman keep the upper hand, that is in keeping with his character. So I think that works a lot better actually. But I'd be damned if I let some woman keep the upper hand. And then he's saying, I'd already, come running here. Remember, she sent him that puzzle box, and she sent him the note saying, "Be at the Greenbird restaurant at 7 p.m." And basically, he has done everything she's asked. So he's already annoyed. right? He's like, you know, I ran here like a dog. Yeah, like a dog. That's good, actually. I'd already come running here like a dog. So he's annoyed with himself. That's his ego getting in the way. I'd already come running here like a dog. You know, but I wasn't about to be. I think there's something we can use about, you know, like biting the hand. You know, there's some kind of an image there, but let's just say wasn't about to be. I'd already come running here like a dog, but I was a damn. Have we already used the word damn? Yeah. So it was a dangerous game to play, but I'd be damned if I let some woman keep the upper hand. I'd already come running here like a dog, but I could be a I could be a Rottweiler. How do you spell Rottweiler? Okay, guys, does that make sense in the chat? You understand what I'm doing here? What do you guys think of that? Maybe Rottweiler isn't the right dog. I think it's the right dog that I'm thinking of. You know, very aggressive attack dog. But I could be a Rottweiler. Okay. I could be a Rottweiler, but I was a Rottweiler. I'd already come running here like a dog, but I was a. It needs that. You know, I was a damn Rottweiler. But we can't use damn because we've already used it here. But I was a rabid Rottweiler, that alliteration. Okay, it needs a little bit of work potentially, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to say here. She fixed me with a look. It was a dangerous game to play, but I'd be damned if I let some woman keep the upper hand. I'd already come running here like a dog, but I was a rabid Rottweiler. But I could be... yeah, okay, it's something like that. Okay, then, so, you know, she's... there's this, you know, sort of moment of tension between them, and our captain of the Yakuza, she's still not being ruffled, right? She is keeping her cool, and we continue the story. So, okay, so it took me 5 weeks to solve that box, she said, and in the corner of my eye, I saw one of her bodyguards pull out a gun. I think this needs a comma. You, Mr. Sharp, will have until I finish my soup. I think this is actually, instead of smirked, I snorted. You know, nice try, love, I thought, but I wasn't about to play her game, and nor did I have to. The bodyguard wasn't going to shoot me while I was sitting so close to her, so I picked up my spoon and maybe instead of Doug slurped my soup. Slurp my soup. Maybe we can bring the ex-wife in here. So he slurps his soup and slurped my soup. So I picked up my spoon and slurped my soup. Something like, but whereas. Sabrina. Like maybe his ex-wife, you know, used to hate when he slurped soup. But it's not going to get to. It's not going to get to this. It's not going to ruffle the feathers of this Yakuza captain. So let's see. How would this go? Whereas Sabrina would have called me, you know, an animal. The 18th captain of the Yakuza refused to be ruffled. So I picked up my spoon. Read it once more. I snorted. Nice try, love, I thought, but I wasn't about to play a game, and nor did I have to. Her bodyguard wasn't going to shoot me while I was sitting so close to her. So I picked up my spoon and slurped my soup. Okay. The 18th captain of the Yakuza. 18th, right? So the 18th captain of the Yakuza didn't refuse to be ruffled, right? That was what we said, right? Refused to be ruffled. Yeah. So I think it's something like that. So I picked up my spoon and slurped my soup. Sabrina would have called me an animal. Maybe I will use that. Sabrina would have called me an animal, but the 18th captain of the Yakuza refused to be ruffled. Okay. Right, and then I decided to test that cool exterior with a bit of shock treatment. I waited until she was down to a last spoonful, and then snapped at my spoon, raised it above my head, and smashed it down on the puzzle box, shattering the damn thing and busting open the contents. I think we can just, we can get rid of this. It's just an extra little bit that we don't need. I waited until she was down to a last spoonful, and then snapped at my spoon and smashed it down on the puzzle box, shattering the damn thing. He's used damn a few times. That's something you want to watch out for, is just not using necessarily the same words over and over again, even if that's the choice word of the of your character. So you know, something to watch out for. I'll keep it in there for now, but yeah, just keep that in mind. And smash it down the puzzle, shattering the damn thing and busting open the contents. Solved, I said. Okay, so this needs to be instead of she, needs to be again Curie Mats. 1 second. Matsumoto. So another thing to remember, and again we spoke about this before, is that when you're introducing characters for the first time, this is the first scene we have our characters really meeting each other. This is the first scene where we learn the names even of our antagonist and our protagonist. It bears repeating their names as much as possible so that they become lodged in the audience's mind. So don't be afraid to do that. Instead of you using he and she, go for it. Use the full name even of the of your characters. It just helps. It just helps with building the story and reinforcing the story in the reader's mind. So again, actually this has worked out quite nicely. I don't know if you guys have just realised that, but I have. Is that having done those few edits, we end the first chapter with a compelling last line on the end of a page, which is one of the principles that we've been using, which is actually quite nice. So Kyoto Matsumoto didn't flinch. You know, in fact, I got the impression that it'd take that if a bomb went off, she might yawn. That should be just slightly twisted around. That it'd take a bomb going off before she might yawn. And that's just, again, staying true to her character. She is robotic. This guy has just smashed this puzzle box. You know, Kyori Matsumoto, this 18th captain of the Yakuza, has just she's just gone through this whole story, these long stories about troublesome tanukis, this Japanese folklore that we saw. Then she tells him this whole long-winded explanation about puzzle boxes, their history, what they're used for. Then the fact that she had a puzzle box given to her when she became a Yakuza captain, that there is some sort of sentimental value to all this. There's a sort of a ceremony going on here, right? She's giving him a puzzle box now, and he just brutally smashes this thing into a million pieces. That in itself is a big moment in the scene, and you would think that anyone else would get pretty mad. You know, I've just told you this whole story. I've told you that these puzzle boxes are important, and you've just smashed it in front of me. So instead, though, we twist that and we say, nope, this Yakuza captain is going to be stone cold. So she didn't flinch. In fact, I got the impression that it'd take a bomb going off before she might yawn. She glanced, we don't need the just, she glanced at the broken puzzle box, her long lashes sweeping casually to the side. That's a bit unnecessary, isn't it? Okay, she glanced at the broken puzzle box. Let's just make this quicker, get to the point. She glanced at the broken puzzle box, dabbed her lips with a napkin, and then turn to a bodyguard. And then turn to a bodyguard. Do you need the then? And turned to her bodyguard. Tell them to serve the fish. Right? And we said that this line, again, full of subtext. The subtext being, okay, this guy, I get it. You know, this guy, I'm not going to ruffle him. This guy, you've passed the test. I'm not going to kill you. You know, I'm not going to have my guy shoot you. Tell them to serve the fish. Let's move on to chapter 2, and I'll tell you what you're really here for. Okay, so this is how we finished chapter 1 yesterday. And hey guys, here we go. We are going to do a page break. Where's the page break? How do you do that? Insert page break. Right, I'm using Pages here on Mac to write this story. So you guys can you know, see all this happening in real time. So let's insert a page break. Let's go back to the beginning of chapter 1 and just take this and use it to create chapter 2 in the correct in the same format. So here we go, chapter 2, and we are gonna. So there are two ways we can go. There are two ways we can start this second chapter. Either we have a time cut, we go to a completely different scene, you know, either at some point way in the future of this story, or at some point way in the past, or we continue straight on where we left off. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. It's difficult in one respect and it's easy in another. So it's difficult for some, you know, people like us who are just making up a story as we go along. We don't know what the future is going to hold yet. We don't really know what the plot is just quite yet. So to do a time cut to the future would be a little bit more challenging. It's not to say it would be impossible or even a bad idea, because if we did write a scene at the end, maybe we see this guy, you know, he's been our protagonist, Mr. Sharp, you know, he's been shot, and you know he's holding, you know, a puzzle box in his hand, and you know he's bleeding out in, you know, an alleyway, or he's bleeding out on the top office of a Japanese bank, and he's just sort of playing through his mind, or you know, how did I get to this point? It's you know, it's that kind of a scene, and then chapter 3 we come back and we pick up this restaurant scene. Okay, and we can go back and forth like that. And what that does is it also gives us, you know, as pantsers, as people making up this story as we go along, it forces us to constrain. It gives us boundaries. You know, it's the random object generator, right? Here are 5 objects. Make a story out of them. So we write 5 chapters at the beginning of this novel, and they're from different time points in this novel. And we say, okay, those are your 5 opening chapters. Now make a story out of them. So that's possible as well. We could go to the past. We could learn a little bit more about why our protagonist is in Japan. That's something we still haven't fleshed out. We could learn about maybe a scene with his ex-wife. We could see, you know, his character come alive a bit more. Those are things that we could do, or we can just stick with this scene. Now, I want to stick with this scene simply because I had a little bit of an idea yesterday on where this scene might go and what's going to happen, and I want to show you guys that. So, and finally, I just want to make one point here, a very important point, that in a movie, for instance, for example, if you have a very long scene, by the magic of, you know, editing and just, you know, cuts, a movie maker doesn't have to tell you it doesn't have to show you every single second, a play-by-play of every second of what's going on in a scene, right? He can just do a clever bit of editing, you know, a switch of the camera. We see the clock, you know, the hands go forward 10 minutes or whatever, and we understand, okay, we've gone a little bit further. There's a bit of a time cut. Where a lot of novelists go wrong, where I've gone wrong in the past, is not use the same technique when I'm writing a scene. So we finished a scene here, essentially. we finished one portion of the dialogue. This guy, our protagonist, passing the test set to him by the Yakuza captain. We don't need to say, we don't need to have a play-by-play of every second of this conversation. We just want to focus on the really important and really cool bits of dialogue and the most important things about this whole conversation. So I was a little bit long-winded. I hope you guys understand what I mean by that. So let me show you what I was thinking. So I'm going to bring up the story, that Japanese folk tale that I found a few days ago, that I found last week, and that informed this whole idea of the tanuki and the farmer. So I'm going to bring this up onto the screen. I hope you guys can see that. I will zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we know the first part about the tanuki killing the farmer's wife, and afterwards he serves the farmer the soup. The story then goes on as follows. A rabbit was friends with the farmer and promised to avenge the wife's murder. The rabbit befriended the tanuki and persuaded the two of them to go harvest grass for the winter. However, after they both had large bundles of grass on their backs, the rabbit secretly lit the tanuki's bundle on fire with some flint. Curious, the tanuki asked what the crack crack sound was, to which the rabbit replied that it was just saying how the mountain they were on was named Kachi Kachi Mountain. The tanuki's grass bundle burst into flame, badly burning the tanuki. In feigned distress, the rabbit then gave the tanuki a poultice of pepper, right? Like a lotion to help with the healing, but made of pepper, so it ended up stinging the tanuki quite badly. A month later, the rabbit talked to the tanuki who had recovered from its ordeals and persuaded the two to go fishing. The tanuki agreed and went on a boat provided by the rabbit. As the two creatures decided to race in the river, it became apparent that the rabbit's boat was made out of wood, while the tanuki's was made out of clay, which began to dissolve. So clay in that sense meaning sort of mud clay, which began to dissolve. The tanuki was thrown into the water and begged for help, whereupon the rabbit revealed his friendship with the farmer and boasted of how the tanuki was finally paying for his crime. The rabbit then hit the tanuki, floundering in the water, with his oar, and essentially killed it. And the old man was happy that his wife's murder had been avenged. Right, and that's just a cleaner version. So that's the full story. That's the full children's story. And we talked about using subtext, and how maybe we can use this story to craft some really good dialogue. So if we take a look at this story, we see that in the beginning, when Kyori Matsumoto tells this story, she says, essentially, "You, Mr. Sharp, are a troublesome tanuki. I am the farmer. You are causing me trouble, so I have caught you and, essentially brought you to this restaurant, and I can kill you at a moment's notice. I'm not going to have any mercy on you like the farmer's wife." That's what she's said, right? Using this first part of the story. Now, she's going to say, I think, she's going to continue the story. There was a rabbit, right? She's going to introduce this character of the rabbit, who was friends with the farmer. And, the rabbit essentially solves the farmer's problem, right? He goes out and he eliminates the troublesome tanuki. So what I'm thinking is that Kyori, this Yakuza captain, is going to hire... What she actually wants to do is hire our protagonist to help her with a problem she's having within the Yakuza, right? And she wants our guy, Mr. Sharp, to be her rabbit, right? So originally our guy thought, oh, you're calling me a tanuki and I'm a troublesome tanuki to you? And Kyori Matsumoto is saying, no, on the contrary. I want you to be a rabbit. I want you to be my rabbit. I want you to help me solve a problem. And then she's going to hire him for this job. Does that make sense? I hope that guys, let me know if that makes sense. You understand what I'm saying here? So it's using this story to to explain what it's using one story, this folktale, to explain what the plot of this novel potentially might be. And the important thing here is that once the rabbit has solved the farmer's problems, obviously the rabbit and the farmer, sort of live happily ever after, and that promise of living happily ever after is the promise that Kyori Matsumoto, our Yakuza captain, is making to Mr. Sharp. She's saying, if you help me out and you become my rabbit, we will live happily ever after. You will be taken care of by the Yakuza. That's going to be a good thing for you. So there will be a reward. Probably the reward is going to be, as we alluded to in this message at the beginning. I know why you're here, Mr. Sharp. I know what you're looking for, right? This "I know what you're looking for" is maybe the reward that Kyori Matsumoto is going to promise Mr. Sharp if he helps her, something like that. That's basically what I thought will be now the plot of this story. So we're going to go deep into the Yakuza. We're going to find out that this captain of the Yakuza has many problems with her business, and our guy, Mr. Sharp, is going to be the one to help her. Okay. Hopefully that is clear. So let's get into writing this, and obviously it's quite easy to write this first part. So because we're just going to paraphrase that folklore tale that we just read. So the waiter put a plate of fish, a plate of finely sliced fish in front of us. Okay, that's just literally carrying on. We're telling the reader we're staying in the same scene. We're still here, but it's a few moments later because Kyori Matsumoto said tell them to serve the fish. So the waiter put a plate of finely sliced fish in front of us. That implies it's a few minutes later, but we're still in the same scene in front of us. Right. So let's just sketch out this scene like we always do. We know that Kyori Matsumoto, she is maybe she eats. She's not afraid to eat in the company of our guy. She's just getting on with her life, and she's just presenting our protagonist with this opportunity. Okay, Kyori Matsumoto eats. We need a compelling last line to force the reader to turn the page. That's a must. And then we've got this story of the rabbit that has to be put in, and also we need to know what's in the puzzle box, because this guy just smashed the puzzle box, so we need to know what's inside the puzzle box. And you know what, I think maybe yes, okay, let's say that inside the puzzle box was a little white figurine of a rabbit. Okay, and it's just this little trinket inside the puzzle box of a rabbit, and that is going to prompt Kyori Matsumoto to deliver, to go on with her story. So everything she does is a very elaborate ceremonial type of thing. She doesn't just say I want to hire you for a job, right? She's not that kind of character. What she likes to do is make a whole big production, right? Everything is full of splendor and grandeur and and so much pomp and all of that. So that's what she likes to do. So we're gonna continue that. I think that would work quite nicely. Okay, so Kyori Matsumoto she eats her meal, and then let's have our protagonist just, you know, sort of, he's looking at what's in this puzzle box. So okay, how about something like this? So the way to put a plate of finely sliced fish in front of us. Kyoto Matsumoto must have really liked fish, because she didn't say anything until she was finished, right? This is a character, like we said, she loves to talk, and now she's just saying nothing until she finishes eating her fish. Something like that, whatever. It's something to come back to. Our guy, I looked at the contents of the broken puzzle box, or the puzzle box. What did you do? Smashed it, right? The puzzle box, which I'd smashed. Which I'd there you go. Which I'd smashed. Inside was a little, what was it? A little white figurine, right? Was a little white figurine of a rabbit. Now, we've got a few of those to be verbs here. We want to eliminate that potentially. So maybe he just pulls out from the wreckage. He you know, sifts through it with his hand, and he pulls out this figurine of a rabbit, right? And that's going to prompt Kyori Matsumoto to continue her story. So let's indent. Where's our? Oh, we don't even need to do that. We just copy and paste something like this, just to get the formatting correct. So okay, right. So let me just bring that story up onto the screen, the folklore up onto my other screen here, and then I'll use that to as a basis for this dialogue here. She's just going to basically paraphrase that whole story, and then once she said that whole story, yes, then her last line is going to be something like, you know, I've got to plug in this laptop, one sec. I'm going to lose, that would be terrible, losing power. Okay, so yeah, she's going to say this whole story about the rabbit, and then she's going to give this compelling last line, you know, are you a tanuki or a rabbit? So it's something like that, right? And she's basically saying, if you're a tanuki, then you're going to be killed. I'm going to kill you, or you're going to be a rabbit, and we're going to be friends, and you're going to work for me, and there will be much reward in it for you. Right. So let me write the this dialogue here. So we need to reorientate the reader. So the farmer had a neighbor. Okay, said Kyori Matsumoto. And let's just say she's picking up her parable. Might not need that bit, but it just reinforces the point. Once we say the farmer had a neighbor, the reader recalls, oh yeah, it's that story, right? Okay, we're picking up that story. There's more to it. I'm with you, right? We just need to make sure that is absolutely clear, because otherwise, you know, one of the main things that I've talked about over the past 7 days is that you never want to alienate your reader. Make sure the reader is keeping up. You can make it difficult for them to solve, to understand what's happening, but they should never be lost in the story. They should always be able to go, okay, we're at this point and we're talking about this, and then we can make it complicated after that. Okay. So the farmer had a neighbor, a rabbit, or maybe a crafty rabbit, right? A crafty rabbit who swore, you know, he's going to help the farmer to avenge the wife's death. Okay, and then again, I'm just sort of reading from that story. Let's just remembering that story. This rabbit goes on to befriend the tanuki. So let's write that in. He befriended the tanuki, and invited him one day to, what was it? To harvest grass for the winter. Okay. Right, on the way back home, the rabbit set the tanuki's bundle of grass on fire. Okay, now I don't really get what this whole thing is about, you know, in this story, but we're just going to write the story and then we can edit it and take a bit of creative license with it in a bit. So they might take this grass on fire, and when the tanuki asked what the crackling sound was, the rabbit told the tanuki they were walking on the crackling mountain. Okay. Crackling mountain. Okay. Okay. Then there was that whole thing of, you know, the tanuki burns his back, and then the rabbit applies this lotion, this lotion made of chilies, which really stings the tanuki's back, and really, you know, this is the rabbit beginning to take revenge for the farmer. First he sort of injures the tanuki, and then he ultimately kills it. And that is what the subtext is going to be for this conversation, that our Yakuza captain is going to say, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to go and injure first and then destroy one of my enemies. And by doing that, you will become, you know, my rabbit, so to speak. And we will have a good relationship. It will be good for you. I'm going to give you a reward for that. So that's essentially what we're doing. So we keep going on. We're going to have to edit this because otherwise it's going to be a huge chunk of dialogue. But let's write it all down first. So again, I'm just looking at this story and trying to put it into the words of Kyori Matsumoto, our 18th captain of the Yakuza. The rabbit told the tanuki they were walking on a crackling mountain. When the flames burned the tanuki's back, and he was in terrible pain, the crafty rabbit, again, reinforce that, the crafty rabbit, because our Mr. Sharp is, you know, he's sharp, as we've said. He's also going to be this crafty character. He's not going to be the bruiser. He's not going to be a Jack Reacher type of character in the sense of he's going to be a big guy who knows how to fight and all that. He's going to be the sly character. Our protagonist is going to be, you know, a Bugs Bunny. There we go, a Bugs Bunny character to continue this metaphor. That's how he's going to go about his business. He's got a mouth on him. He's got an attitude problem, but he's not a bulky fighter. So let's continue with that. When the flames burned the tanuki's back and he was in terrible pain, the crafty rabbit helpfully applied, you know, a lotion made of chili, or maybe chili powder, something like that. Okay, I don't need to explain that would be the worst kind of pain to be in. That you know, this, you know, we understand that, is that the reader understands that. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of that story, which is this boat race, and this boat race is where the rabbit just goes and kills the tanuki. Something just to keep in mind here: if you've got dialogue that goes on for 2 paragraphs, you don't put you don't put speech marks at the end of that. Whenever the paragraph breaks, you just leave it blank, and you open quotation marks, open speech marks on the next line. It looks a bit weird, but that's just the standard approach. So okay, the next week. One second. The next week, the rabbit built 2 boats one was made out of wood. One, right? Made. This is the whole. This is the race. One made out of wood, and one made out of clay, and challenged the okay, so we can either have this as he challenges the Tanuki to a race, or he invites the Tanuki to go out fishing. I think better to go out fishing, and invited the Tanuki, to go fishing. But in the middle of the lake, the Tanuki's clay boat began to sink, right? And this is when the rabbit sort of reveals his treachery, began to sink. Right, so in the middle of the Tanuki's clay boat began to sink, and when he called out to his friend, right? Called out to his friend, and we put that in. His friend, the rabbit. His friend, the rabbit, only laughed. And what did we say? And how does the story go? And 1 second, let me just bring it up. Right, the rabbit called out to his friend for help. Where's my mouse gone? There we go. Called out to his friend for help. When he called his friend, the rabbit only laughed and told and said, here are your just desserts. Are your just desserts. Right. Here are your just desserts. It's something like that, right? The rabbit hit the Tanuki with his oar, right, from his boat, and both the Tanuki and the clay boat sank into the lake. Okay, so that's basically the story that Kyori Matsumoto is going to tell. The 18th captain is going to tell our protagonist, and she's implying through the subtext that I want to offer you this job. I want you to come and work for me. I've got enemies, and I want you to be not a Tanuki, not a troublesome Tanuki, but I want you to be a rabbit. I want you to be my rabbit, and that's it. So the rabbit hit the Tanuki with his oar, and both the Tanuki and the clay boat sank into the lake forever, right? She's a dramatic character. Let's use that. So, okay. Right. The farmer was so grateful that he to the rabbit that he invited right, he was so grateful that he he invited the rabbit to live with him, something like that. Invited the rabbit to live with him, and they became firm friends, right? That's it. Okay. So she goes and says this whole long-winded this, here are your just as it said, the rabbit, just something like that. This needs, again, I will edit this in a bit, make it a little bit better, but basically this is the structure, and then the compelling last line. Again, let's just make it a bit heavy-handed. The question, Mr. Sharp, are you a Tanuki or a rabbit? Okay, that's basically the question, and then we can end the scene that is a perfect point to end the scene, to get out of this restaurant and do a time cut to some other part of the story. We want to get out of that scene, and like we said before, you want to end a scene as soon as possible. Once you've made the point, however subtly, you want to get out of the scene and get on to the next bit, because that's what gives your story energy and life and doesn't let it drag on. So yeah, that's basically where we're going to go. So okay, our protagonist is now he at this point he is eating his own he's eating his own plate of food, the fish, and he's got to mull this over, right? So it's a reaction beat here. That's what's going on. So I ate. What is this? I eat. I didn't say anything to that first. I'm just going to write something and then edit it. See where this seed needs to go. I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. Was was she offering me a job, or was she trying to confuse me with another, something like this? He's just sort of trying to figure this whole thing out. Let's see. Okay, something like that. Okay. So, take a bomb going off before she might yawn. She asks the first. Okay, dab her lips with a napkin, turn to a bodyguard, tell them to serve the fish. Okay, and then we got this, chapter 2. The way to put a plate of finely sliced fish in front of us. Kyoto Matsumoto must have really liked fish, because she didn't say anything until. Yeah, not sure about that line. I looked at the contents of the puzzle box which I'd smashed. Inside was a little white figurine of a rabbit. So Kyoto Matsumoto, a crafty rabbit who swore, right, became firm friends. I didn't say anything to that. Wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. She's offering a job, or she's trying to confuse me with another test. One thing I knew, she needed me for something. Okay, so this is him just going through our guy is very cerebral, right? He's a sharp guy. He's trying to figure this out. He needs to know what's going on. He wants to know what's going on. So the problem that I'm having right now is just figuring out what happens in this interim period between Kyoto Matsumoto finishing this long stream of dialogue and essentially making her offer and explaining this is why you're here, and this final line of, are you a tanuki or a rabbit? So what goes here? Maybe this isn't the last line. And they became firm friends. I didn't say anything to that. Maybe he's going to make a quip, a little one-liner about, what a ridiculous story. I can't believe. I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. Was she offering me a job, or was she trying to confuse me with another test? One thing I knew. She needed me for something. The other thing, someone should really, write to the school board about these folk tales. It's something like that. He's already made the joke before about what the hell kind of story is that to tell children. It's this grim story about a farmer who gets swindled by a tanuki, which is some sort of a raccoon who can shapeshift, and the farmer gets swindled, his wife gets killed, he eats his wife in a soup, and then we get this rabbit, and this tanuki, and the rabbit's killing the tanuki, for revenge. There are a lot of mixed messages and metaphors that certainly Western culture might not necessarily agree to telling their children. Having said that, there are the Grimm's fairy tales, which are quite grim. So yeah, okay, maybe there's something like that. Japanese, the other. Okay, it's something like that. There's a joke to be made there. I ate my fish and said nothing. Something like that. The question was shot, are you a tanuki or a rabbit? Or maybe he does get her meaning. So the other thing we could do is, I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. And then he explains, or maybe he does understand her meaning. No, because then that doesn't work with this line. Okay, it's almost there. This chapter is almost there. This beginning of the chapter. Right. So the farmer had a neighbor, picking up a parable, a crafty rabbit who swore to avenge the wife's death. He befriended the tanuki and invited him one day to harvest grass for the winter. On the way home, the rabbit set the tanuki's bundle of grass on fire. When the tanuki asked what the crackling sound was, the rabbit told the tanuki they were walking on the crackling mountain. When the flames burned the tanuki's back, and he was in terrible pain, the crafty rabbit helpfully applied a lotion made of chili powder. The next week, the rabbit built 2 boats, one made out of wood and one made out of clay, and invited the tanuki to go fishing. But in the middle of the lake, the tanuki's clay boat began to sink, and when he called out to his friend for help, the rabbit only laughed and said, now the farmer's wife will be avenged. Now the farmer's wife is avenged. Right? So perhaps this is also informing us about the motive now of our Yakuza captain. So she is taking revenge against someone in her organization or family or something like that, and that's why she's bringing in Mr. Sharp. So again, we see that out of this story that we found, this random story, we're getting ideas for what our novel might be by using this story as subtext. So now the farmer's wife is avenged. The rabbit hit, and said, now the farmer's wife is avenged. The rabbit then hit the tanuki with his oar and sent the tanuki and both the tanuki and the clay boat sank into the lake forever. The farmer was so grateful that he invited the rabbit to live with him, and they became firm friends. I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't really sure I understood. Okay, didn't say anything to that. Yeah, this needs to be. There needs to be something there. I don't know. So what's he going to say? Talk straight, Miss Matsumoto. Maybe he says something like that. The question, Miss Sharp, is, are you a tanuki or a rabbit? Right? And then we end the scene there. Okay. It's something like this. We got one line really left to fill in here. So the question is, again, you don't want to waffle. You don't want to just put in filler. but we kind of have, we need to figure out what his reaction is going to be and how. So, I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. Was she offering me a job, or was she trying to confuse me with another test? Okay. I was glad she liked to talk so much, but I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. Was she offering me a job? Was she trying to right? He'd said before. Let's read a little bit further back, and that will probably help us solve this this issue here. He wanted her to do all the talking, right? So he wants her to do all the talking. He wanted her to do all the talking, which she is. So he's pretty pleased about that. That this woman is this Kyori Matsumoto, this 18th captain of the Yakuza, is doing all the talking, because our guy doesn't. He had no idea what he was here for. Okay, the farmer had a neighbor, said Kyori Matsumoto, picking it right. Crafty rabbit, she explains this whole thing. Right, I didn't say anything to that. I was glad she liked. I'd wanted her to do all the talking, right? All the talking. But, oh, okay, yeah, here we go. This is what it needs, okay? I didn't say anything to that. I wanted her to do all the talking, but I wasn't really sure I understood my meaning. It was just like when me and Sabrina, right, bringing back that ex-wife, reinforcing this idea. So clearly this ex-wife is going to be an important part of this story. And I'm just wondering, wow, maybe the ex-wife is who the this captain of the Yakuza is going to have a problem with, right? Maybe this ex-wife, get this guys, how about this? I'm thinking here, what happens if after, you know, our protagonist, Mr. Sharp, and his wife, Sabrina, they got, you know, somehow they got divorced, they're not together, and then this Sabrina, she went and became, you know, some sort of, you know, criminal, and she became some threat to this Yakuza captain. She ruffled the feathers of this Yakuza. She's done something. She's gone and done something, and now this Yakuza captain is gunning for her. Can you imagine the triangle? That sort of triangle. So this ex-wife, she's maybe taken on a new persona. She's become some sort of criminal, new criminal on the scene of Japan, going by a name that is obviously not Sabrina. You know, it's something. You know, it's Mrs. You know, it's Mrs. X. It's Mrs. Problem, right? It's Mrs. X, and this Yakuza captain has been affected by her, right? And now the Yakuza captain tells Mr. Sharp, I want you to go and find this person, eliminate them because they're a threat to my business and I've had enough, okay? And obviously Sharp's going to say, okay, I'll take that job. And then later on, as he gets closer and closer, it's revealed that this person that he's hunting is his ex-wife, right? She's become this big, you know, criminal in Japan, and you know, that's the story. It's very easy to imagine that story. We've seen that kind of thing, you know, a number of times before in movies, but it just works. I mean, I think that's pretty good. Let's keep that in the mind, and we'll percolate on that, and we'll see if the story does eventually go in that direction. But there you go. There's an idea, right? I'm making this story up as I go along, and you can see it coming out day by day, which is really why I made these videos, is to show you guys what it's like to write a novel from scratch with no idea where you're going. This is what it's like. You don't have to know everything on day one. You just need to put one word after the next. Start with a compelling first line, and then just keep going, and good things will happen, right? Okay, so I'd wanted her to do all the talking, but I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. It was just like when me and Sabrina were together. She talked in riddles. Something like that. Okay. Just like when me and Sabrina were together. She always used to talk in riddles. Yeah, something like that. Was she? Okay. Something like that. Didn't say anything to that. I wanted her to do all the talking, but I wasn't really sure I understood her meaning. It was just like when me and Sabrina were together. She always used to talk in riddles. Was this Yakuza captain? Was this Yakuza captain offering me a job, or was she just trying to confuse me with another test? One thing I knew, she needed me for something. Right, one thing I knew, she needed me for something. That, and someone should really write to the Japanese Minister of Education Japanese Minister of Education, of Children's Education, and raise an inquiry about these folk tales. So it's something like that, right? He makes that kind of a joke, that kind of a quip. I'm not sure if he says this line. Maybe, yeah, I don't think he needs to say anything here. Okay. Matsumoto. Okay, so what would she do? She would Kiri Matsumoto, she puts her cutlery very neatly together. She's finished eating. Finished her fish and placed. Now, interesting here. So you see, I immediately went to cutlery because I'm thinking Western. Is she eating with chopsticks? Because it's maybe like a sushi-based dish, potentially. I will just put cutlery for now, and finished her fish and placed her cutlery neatly on her empty plate. The question, Mr. Sharp, she said, is, are you a tanuki or a rabbit? Okay, and that's basically it. That's there we go. There's the first part of chapter 2, and that's it. And then we're gonna have this time jump tomorrow. We're gonna put 3 stars here to indicate that that's a time jump, and then we're gonna start this scene with the next scene of chapter 2 with our guy Mr. Sharp at a later point in the novel. Obviously he has said, I want to be a rabbit. He's accepted the offer. It's something like that. So I hope that sort of makes sense. There's certainly enough writing for today to sort of mull over in the head. And this is just the first draft of the novel. As you can see, we don't need to know everything. We can just sort of put in little bits and pieces that might work. And then later on, when we continue writing, we can see if these strands come together and tie them all up. So, okay, again, this has been a day of a lot of subtext and using this story here about the rabbit and the tanuki and the farmer and the farmer's wife to essentially inform us what this plot might be. I even have a potential plot for this book, you know, with this ex-wife becoming this sort of triangle of characters, all sort of vying for power, right? You've got the 18th captain of the Yakuza, you've got Mr. Sharp, you've got his ex-wife, and we're going to go around between them. 3 principal characters, maybe we'll add a 4th principal character, and we'll build a story. So, okay, I hope that makes sense, guys. I hope you are enjoying these videos. Thank you so much to everyone who is participating in the chat for all the comments, ideas, questions that have come in both on the chat and privately. This is really great. You know, we want to build a community. I want to build a community. Thank you for everyone who's following. Please do like, subscribe, follow on YouTube, and